Howdy viewers, it's me again, the Anthro Fox guy, back with another review for you. Today's going to be sort of a nostalgic treat for me, since I'm going to be reviewing an adaptation of The Adventures of Hank the Cowdog. This was the first in a series of books written by John R. Erickson, a cowboy author from Midland, Texas. The series focuses on a dog named Hank who dubbed himself the head of ranch security for the Pollo Loco Ranch. I grew up with this series and only vaguely remember that the first book got made into a half-hour movie by the Saturday morning anthology series StoryBreaks. StoryBreaks was a Saturday morning anthology series that aired on CBS and ran from 1985 to 1998. It'd take children's books like Mama Don't Lie and How He Fried Worms and turn them into half-hour movies. The animation team came from Hanna-Barbera, so I remember it being fairly decent to watch. I remember liking these as a kid, and was unexpectedly thrilled when I found the series again on the internet. Though downloading the episode I wanted to cover was a challenge, though thankfully that kid Douglas and Stagemaster 15 were able to help me out. Now because this is an adaptation, of course things are going to be left out or changed, and I'll point out when and where that happens. But enough of all this backstory, let's begin. So after StoryBreaks' intro, the story begins by panning over a desert area and wow. Okay, I know this was back in the 80s, and standards for visual quality were different, but this text! Hey guys, you know what a good idea not to do might be? Having your text be a similar color to the background you're layering it over. I can barely even read who the screenplay writer was for this. Oh, and you see that little cross thing in the corner there? Yeah, that's apparently the logo CBS had at the time. I'd try to crop it out, but then the video would look terrible. So instead, I'll put my own little watermark in the corner there so it won't be all alone. There. Anyway, we pull into the Pollo Loco Ranch, and we find our star Hank doing what he usually does. Sleeping.
When I took this job as head of ranch security, I knew I was only flesh and blood, a couple of ears, and a pretty nice kind of nose that women really go for.
Oh god, the audio quality in that narration. Again, 80s, but that shouldn't be an excuse. The reverb for Hank's narration is just... I don't even know how to begin describing it. It just comes off as rather unappealing. Did no one listen back to the audio on this and think that it sounded rather bad? Plus, I don't remember them using any narration in any of the other episodes in this series, so really, they could have just left this narration out. And that's Frank Welker voicing Hank, by the way. Frank's also voicing Pete the Barn Cat there, who's sort of a rival slash antagonist for Hank.
All day and all night you put your life on the line, and for what? A bunch of idiot birds that just as soon peck you on the nose and say howdy.
Scram, Pete!
You're a born chicken dog.
Chicken dog? Oh, I hate that!
Chicken Dog is what the cats would call Hank, mainly due to how often he'd fight them off from the hen house. Since Hank's a very prideful character, and Pete often tries to bait him into getting in trouble by chasing him around, I'm guessing this is how the writers wanted to introduce the characters. So, like any dog would, Hank starts chasing Pete around the ranch, causing chaos, which isn't too unfamiliar a scene in the series. It's also here where we see the human characters, Ranch Hand Slim Chance,
It's a pun!
Hyde Loper, and Pete's owner, Sally Mae. And it's here I think the changes start happening. In the books, it's Loper who's head of the ranch. Sally Mae is just his wife who handles the gardening, the chickens, etc. She also doesn't care much for Hank in the books. Here, Loper is one of the ranch hands, and Sally Mae is head of the ranch. I'm also guessing she's Hank's owner? I don't really know. As night falls, Hank encounters and chastises his assistant Drover. While Hank tends to be overconfident, Drover is extremely cowardly, and would rather pretend he has a bum leg to avoid work, and run away than fight.
My feet got hurting real bad, Hank.
I'm not sure who voices Drover in this, but the voice does fit. One thing though, in the books, Drover is a short-eared dog with a cut-off tail. Here, Drover has floppy ears and a bushy tail. Essentially, design-wise, Drover is simply a shorter, fluffier white version of Hank. As the night goes on, Hank gets this message.
Hank! Oh, Hank! Wake up! Hank!
Huh? What?
Oh, Hank! There's been a killing right here on the ranch and we slept through it!
That Hank, always on top of things. He's the best.
Head of ranch security. Just the sound of that title makes my tail wag. And now this, a murder right under my nose.
I can't afford to keep you dogs around here if you're going to let this sort of thing happen. Everybody has to earn his keep on this ranch, Hank. I can't afford to lose any of these chickens.
You can't be soft with a working dog, ma'am.
You're right, Slim. I guess I've spoiled him.
Okay, now I'm convinced they gave High Loper's role to Sally Mae here. Since, in the book, it's Loper who discovers the dead hen and tells Hank he can't afford to keep ineffective guard dogs around. I really can't figure out why they gave this role to Sally Mae. Maybe CBS just wanted to be progressive?
It occurred to me that there wasn't much any of us could do for the dead chicken, and I was hungry.
I don't want this to happen again, Hank.
But I decided against it. It wouldn't look too good if I ate the murder victim with all the trouble I was in.
A theme with Hank is that while he is mostly charged with guarding the hen house, he also has this slight weakness of enjoying the taste of chicken. Either in the first book or the next one, Loper brings up egg-sucking dogs, which are basically dogs that either eat hens or eat their eggs. And the only way to be rid of them is to drive them off with gunfire. Guard dogs, or if said guard dog is the one killing the chickens, having the dog put down. Fortunately for Hank, he usually tends to control himself. The following night, Hank and Drover intend to sit up and catch whoever the culprit is. Drover, however, whines that his feet hurt too much to go on patrol. This is a regular tactic from Drover to try and avoid work, and while Hank's wise to it, he usually just lets Drover get off with a scolding. When Hank comes back, he finds that rather than guard his post, Drover is playing with a frog. Hold on. The entire surrounding area is portrayed as a desert wasteland. Why would a frog be in such an environment?
Questions for later.
Hank hits Drover with the cold hard truth.
Drover, there's only one thing that keeps you from being a good cow dog.
What is it, Hank?
You're worthless.
Well, he isn't wrong. Drover's a cowardly little butt who feels like he'd rather be a house pet than a guard dog. Hank tries to fire Drover. I don't really think he can do that, can he? But Drover guilts him into letting him stay and promises to be a better guard dog from now on.
The machine shed, dang!
Hank, I seen him! I seen him! He's terrible!
Calm down and give me a description.
I'm calm! I'm calm! He's big, and I mean big, huge, enormous! He's black and white and has a gigantic tail that whistles through the air and horns growing out of his head, and there's green slobber dripping from his jaws. It's a monster, Hank! A genuine monster!
Think I can whip him?
I love how Hank doesn't question there being such a thing as monsters like in the book. Although in the second one he does call airplanes silver monster birds.
I got him now.
Is what General Custard said. Something I want to point out. There are two chapters that don't really appear in this movie. One where Hank and Drover sneak right into town with Loper and intentionally annoy a boxer named Bruno, and the other I'll talk about later. It seems that the movie is sticking with the mystery of who the chicken killer is. After getting thoroughly thrashed by Bossy, Hank decides the best way to catch the culprit is to stake out the hen house. Unfortunately, the killer strikes again while Hank is asleep.
MO is the same, Drover.
What's that?
It stands for modus operandi. That's detective talk for how it was done.
Gosh, Hank, you know everything.
Yeah? Well, I don't know who's killing these chickens yet, but I'm gonna find out.
Hank chooses to take the chicken away for investigation and is immediately caught by Loper. In the book, the hen's body is discovered before the sun even comes up, and Hank is discovered to have unintentionally eaten her in his sleep by Sally Mae. I can see why the writers chose to deviate from this, since the only thing that was left of the chicken in the book was her head, and I can see why that would probably be disturbing for some kids. You know what else is arguably disturbing for kids? This.
To think that all this time Hank's been the one killing my chickens.
I tried to explain to him that I'd been performing one of them there autopsies on that hen when Loper found me and that they was blaming the wrong man.
How could you do such an awful thing, Hank?
Hank's useless on the ranch if we can't trust him with the chickens no more.
We could build him a kennel.
That's the stupidest idea I've ever...
So when I first watched this, I thought that because I heard a reverb that was Hank thinking to himself. It's really confusing because usually whenever a character is having a mental monologue, there's usually a reverb to differentiate it from the regular speaking voice. But here they use it when Hank is thinking and narrating. Again, why did they have the narration? And if they had to have it, why use the same audio editing when Hank is thinking to himself?
Hank, what are you doing?
I'm fixing to bust out of here before they lock me up and throw away the key.
Hank, you can't leave.
I'm through, Drover. I quit.
But Hank, wait! What about the ranch?
You're in charge now. Take care of things, son. I'm starting a new life. I'm hitting the outlaw trail, Drover.
No, Hank.
Next time we meet, I won't be Hank the Cowdog. I'll be Hank the Outlaw. So long.
Oh, Hank.
Be sure to watch out for mating jackrabbits and killer cacti. So now I'm going to talk about that second chapter I mentioned earlier. In the book, Hank discovers he's being followed by a pair of buzzards. A pair named Wallace and Jr. who become recurring characters in the series. Remember that chicken head I mentioned earlier? In the book, Loper tied it around Hank's neck as a form of punishment, and apparently it was giving off signals that convinced Junior that Hank was dead, hence why he and his father were following him. Since that wasn't used in the movie, pair really don't show up here. Or maybe they do, since there's a pair of buzzards in the next scene. I'm going to assume that the writers decided to combine the buzzard chapter with the chapter where Hank meets the next character. In the book, this scene was a bit different, since the guy had got her face stuck in a Hawaiian punch can. I'd have rather they kept that in, since, yeah, people do tend to throw out cans when they're driving along a highway. Who throws out a metal bucket? Hank's first instinct is to just walk away, but he ultimately decides that he just can't leave the coyote to such a miserable death.
Don't be afraid, ma'am. I'm here to help you.
Thanks for saving my life, handsome stranger.
Okay, this is a bit of a nitpick, but in the books, the coyotes speak broken English. Here, they speak in full sentences. The difference for the two dialects is because, in the books, coyotes are supposed to be wild animals, as opposed to domestic animals like Hank. Even though other wild animals like the buzzard speak perfect English, but whatever. So, this is Missy. We never find out her real name, never just kind of goes along with the nickname she was given. And she and Hank get along pretty much immediately, forming a mild romance. Unlike other coyotes we see in the series, Missy isn't at all wicked and appears to be more sympathetic towards Hank and his friends.
You work for that chicken ranch in the valley, don't you? I've heard my brother talk about you.
Well, I quit that job to follow the outlaw trail.
It's hard living out in the wild. You know, if things were different between us, if we hadn't met the way we did,
We'd be enemies.
it might be safer if you went back to your ranch and forgot about the outlaw trail, Hank.
Oh, I ain't scared, Missy.
Listen to him, boys. He ain't scared. He chased my daughter up here without any people to protect him. And now he's surrounded, cut off, and otherwise in deep trouble. And he ain't scared.
Oh, yes. They made the blatant love interest pretty, and every other guy was designed to have this half-starved, crazed, scraggly look. I love it. I looked up what a coyote actually looks like, and Missy's design is actually more accurate compared to the rest of her family. Although, to be fair, her dad is meant to be really old, so I guess we can forgive him for looking so unkempt.
Daddy, Hank saved my life. He's my friend.
He saved her life. Ain't that a joke? I ain't never seen nothing like it, Snort.
And he's her friend. I always knew Cowdogs was crazy.
Ugh. How did you do that without breaking your neck? And this is Rip and his brother Snark, by the way. They're the most recurring antagonists in the book, and while they aren't very bright, they're certainly very dangerous. Mainly because they'll try to eat any other character if given the chance. While not as frequent a character as his sister or the two Coyote brothers, Scraunch the Terrible is considered to be the deadliest coyote in their entire pack. He is also superior to Hank in terms of physical strength and willing to kill for the sake of it. Gee, I wonder if the vicious outlaw is the villain of this entire story. Spoilers, spoilers.
Hank, be careful. Scrounge is my brother. I know him. If you make him mad, he'll tear you apart. He's an outlaw.
I know. Now that I think on it, I'm sure I've seen his picture on the wanted poster down at the stockyard.
So animals have wanted posters, do they? Despite knowing that he could be killed at any moment, Hank tries something on Scraunch to fake him out.
Chicken dog, wandering up here was the worst mistake you'll ever make, and it's gonna be your last mistake.
I wouldn't count on it, Scraunch. You see, you've walked right into my trap.
What trap?
The rest of the posse will be along any minute now. They're after the rewards, you know.
You're lying.
Am I? Just ask yourself what a smart cowdog like me's doing up here. Think about it hard.
It works, but a bit too well. Not only does Hank get Scraunch to back off, though in the book Scraunch had to be talked into standing down by his mother and father, but the chief hits Hank with this.
And I'm gonna be proud to have you for a son-in-law, too.
Yeah. Son-in-law?
Daddy, please.
There's an old coyote tradition of adopting a brave dog and making him a brother.
Yeah, by some coincidence, Hank's convinced the fact that he's the dog their tradition was talking about. And they go from wanting to kill him to their chief wanting to marry him off to his daughter Missy. Since Hank doesn't think he's going back to the ranch, he decides to go along with it. That is until one evening when Scraunch makes this announcement.
Jackrabbits run too fast and we get tired of chasing them, don't we? But chickens just sit on their nests until we grab them. And tonight, I'm gonna lead a raiding party and we're gonna grab all you can eat.
Oh, shock and horror. Scraunch was the one killing the chickens this whole entire time, and now he wants to lead an entire raid on the whole ranch. Who could have foreseen this? Me. What's more is, since Hank has run the ranch, he pretty much gets drafted to take part in the raid. In their excitement, the coyotes talk about killing the new guard dog. Despite Hank insisting that Drover will just run and hide, Scraunch is having none of it, saying that he refuses to accept Hank as a potential brother-in-law unless he proves how much he wants to be a part of the pack now, and no longer cares about his old life.
Rip, Snort, there's a cow trail that leads to the ranch from the east. You'll attack from that side.
Got it, Scraunch.
I guess when Scraunch said he was going to lead the whole pack on this raid, he really meant just Rip, Snort, and Hank. Realizing that Scraunch has been the one king of the chickens all this time, Hank convinces him to let him sneak down to the ranch and scout around. Really, what he's doing is just warning Drover about the raid.
Drover!
Oh my gosh, who's there? It sounded like... Is that you, Hank?
Oh, you're a pitiful excuse for a night watchman, son. I could have carried off half the chicken house just now.
I know, I'm a failure. It hasn't been the same around here since you left. I wish you'd come back.
You can forget it. I've hooked up with a band of coyotes. Real fine folks they are, too. Took me right in and made me one of them.
No!
I just come to give you a warning, Drover. A bunch of us are on a raid, and I don't want you to get hurt. Run for the machine shed and stay there.
A few days ago, you were on the side of law and order, trying to catch a criminal. Now you are one. I used to admire you so much. You were my hero.
Knock it off. I don't want to hear that stuff.
What was that?
It's Scraunch's signal. Do what I told you.
I'm not gonna run, Hank. Somebody's got to protect the ranch.
You think you can do it, you little coward?
I may be a coward, but I'm not a traitor and a bum.
What is the measure of a coward? Is it running away when trouble pops up? Or is it being scared but staying to fight for what's right? Every now and then Drover does have his courageous moments, even if they're few and far between. And I feel that this scene with Drover is a good message for kids. Standing up for what's right even if you're scared. At first, Hank is willing to just walk away, but when he hears Scrunch howl again, he rushes to the little mutt's aid. The fight against the coyote is not very impressive or thrilling. Really, Rip and Snort just kind of run away a minute into the fight with Hank. The fight with Scrunch after Hank thinks he's killed Drover is a bit better, but it doesn't really last that long, since people at the house are starting to wake up. In the book, Scrunch escapes. Here, he's backed into a cage and trapped by Hank. When the ranch hands and Sally Mae show up to the scene, they seem to understand what happened and immediately welcome Hank back, apologizing for ever having accused him of killing the chickens. As for Drover, he simply passed out from fright. So that's the animated adaptation of The Adventures of Hank the Cowdog. Did I like it? Yeah. While the audio and visual quality aren't the best, it's a mostly loyal adaptation of the first books about Hank. Some of the characters are portrayed well, their designs are alright, and while the animation does seem kind of stiff and basic for the time, there were moments when I was actually pretty impressed. Really, I think the only issue I actually had was the pacing of the third half. Things just feel a bit rushed, from the confrontation with Scrunch to the raid. Here, the coyotes just kind of give up easily and run away with their tails between their legs. Whereas in the book, the fight with Scrunch is a lot bloodier, Hank even biting off one of his ears. But then, this really is just a half-hour show, and maybe the full story would go over 30 minutes. And like I said, the chapter with Brew the Boxer didn't really add much to the murder mystery, and just felt like a distraction from the rest of the story. Overall, if you have kids or just enjoy nostalgia, I would recommend reading the book or watching the movie on the internet. This is Night Eye saying thanks for watching, and please share your thoughts with me.